What has been your scariest hiking experience? Lost my balance and fell off the trail down a cliff. Broke my left ankle, dislocated my right shoulder and elbow. Came to when it started downpouring. Some kind of animal came and sniffed me, but I was face down. I must have startled it when I moaned trying to move because it took off. I crawled down about 200 yards when I came to a trailhead. A park ranger saw me and radioed for help. She put my arm in a sling and stabilized my leg. Gave me some water. Airlifted to a hospital from there. Wow man. Sounds like that cold been way worse than it turned out. Glad you're doing okay. Thanks, brother. I had been on that trail several times before. I still don't know what caused me to slip. It's been about 7 years now. I go back every now and again. Glad you didn't let it ruin hiking for you permanently. When I was about 7, one of the kids in my neighborhood had told me that he knew his way around the woods and hiking trails by my house. I was a kid and had nothing better to do that day, so I convinced my mom that we'd be fine. After all, my friend knew where we were going. I said we wouldn't go far and we'd be back in an hour or two, and then off we went. Spoiler alert, he did not actually know where the fuck he was going. We realized we were lost after a couple hours, and the logical solution to 7-year-old us appeared to be to wander around and hope we got lucky and found the trailhead we came in through. We wandered for a few more hours, gradually losing hope as the sun began to set. I can remember being completely panicked and convinced I was never going to see my family again. Eventually, and fucking luckily, we came across a guy who had been out for a sunset hike, and he actually had a map and knew where he was going. He walked us back to the entrance by my house in the dark. I made it home safe to an angry mother who was about 5 seconds from calling the cops. On the one hand, she didn't have to call the cops, but if that was my mom, they'd have to call a coroner because she'd have killed me herself. I wish I was joking. I was hiking down a trail in the dead of winter along a stream. At one point the trail narrowed to about 4 feet wide, with a steep slope on one side and a sheer drop of 10 feet to the creek on the other side. The trail was coated in a sheet of ice. Being cautious, I got down on all fours to crawl across the patch of ice. Not good enough. I felt my body sliding slowly towards the edge. I felt suspended in midair before I fell. It reminded me of Wally Coyote from the Roadrunner cartoons, when he looks at the camera and holds up a sign saying help, before plunging to the bottom of the cliff. On the way down, I managed to get my feet pointing down. I landed hard in the creek, making a huge splash. My legs acted as shock absorbers. I clawed my way up the bank, back to the trail, and limped the miles back to my car. I felt lucky to get out of that with just a pulled hamstring. I'll never forget that moment suspended in midair, where I thought I'm about to get really hurt. Same thing happened to me on a rope course. I got dropped by accident, and I just had a thought of, oh no, I'm going to fall here. Fell 20 feet and broke my back. It's a miracle I can still walk. I was going on an overpass hike in a small wooded valley that has lots of smaller connecting valleys coming off of it. I just crested one hill to find out a grass fire that I thought was small was huge and headed my way. I ended up having to run, and as I came to the edge it was about a 100-foot drop. So I was running parallel with the fire looking for a safe way to get down. I eventually got to a slope I could slide down and escape. Once I got to the bottom I found out the tarp I was carrying under my pack was actually melted a bit on one side. I left and did not spend the night to find out a grass fire that I thought was small was huge and headed my way. Why were you walking towards the fire, even if you thought it was small? Small fires are super common in some areas. If they are contained and the winds are predictable, then they aren't much of a threat. This scared the absolute shit out of me as a child. Backstory: Adirondack 46 are here. Started when I was around 11 years old. I went to this summer camp in upstate New York called Chingachgook. They take you on 3-day hikes into the high peaks, and this year happened to be my first time hiking a high peak without my dad, so I was a bit weary. My dad has hiked literally everywhere I can think of, so I never really worried about my safety when we would go. He absolutely knows what he's doing, and it was usually just the two of us. At this summer camp, They send you out into the Adirondacks in groups of 5 to 7 kids. My group was all preteen girls, led by 2 female counselors, usually between the ages of 17 to 19. For some reason this is regarded as perfectly safe and legal, and it never occurred to any parents or staff that a group of teenage girls should not go off into the wilderness alone for several days with no cell service. Anyways, we had been hiking in the Great Range area, and we found a lean-to, so we started setting up our camp. As we're cooking boxed rice later on in the evening by our campsite, one of the counselors spots a bear cub. So obviously being an 18-year-old girl, she really panicked hard. The counselors were trained in survival skills and all that, but come on, at the end of the day they're rich teenagers, and literally just runs away, leaving a group of preteens with one 17-year-old counselor in a mother bear's territory. Cub is sniffing around our food, so we run off. We return like an hour later to not only see our whole camp ransacked and all our food for the trip missing, but also 3 bears, 2 cubs and 1 massive angry brown bear. She was super displeased to see us all wander into her campsite and literally charged after us when we promptly ran away. Honestly, thank fucking god the one counselor we had left happened to have bear spray. All she did was spray it in the bear's general direction and she ran directly into it. We didn't see her or the cubs again, but they are all our food, and like I said, the hikes are 3 days and we had no service. So we basically starved for 3 days, and the runaway counselor still made us hike the Great Range, 4+ high peaks, on empty stomachs. Boy, my dad was so pissed when he heard about that story. I was hiking up a very steep foothill in Wastate when the dead log next to the trail started vibrating. I stopped like WTF, then the ground started to move. 7.0 earthquake incoming. The thing about earthquakes is you're just minding your own business and the one thing you take for granted, the solid ground beneath your feet, starts moving. It's very surreal. I'm in the middle of the woods on a very steep trail. I don't know how big this earthquake is, the big one. I don't know how long it's going to last. I think it was maybe 30 seconds, but time went into slow motion. Right when it started getting really strong and branches and dead trees start coming down, it stopped, and I noped back down to my car. It was potentially pretty dangerous given where I was. I'm glad it stopped when it did. 7.0 is a hell of a strong earthquake. Good decision coming down. Took my 2 boys hiking in the southern Sierras. Oldest kid started kinda bonking, but we were headed back to our campsite. I was walking with the oldest, while my younger son was about 75 yards ahead. Suddenly I notice the boy ahead has stopped and making some sort of strange motion. As I get closer I can see he is mouthing the word bear. We get to him, and there is a creek running along the trail with a bear drinking out of it, about 15 yards from where we stood. For whatever reason, my first thought was to take a picture, but my camera was in my pack. I tried to quietly take it out, but the sound caught the bear's attention. It looked straight at me and then instantly, like a cat, took off and ran the opposite direction. For whatever reason I was too dumb to be scared when we first saw the bear, but when it ran away, the sheer speed at which it moved and the fact that it was so big we could hear its feet hitting the ground caused me to realize, had it decided to attack us, we would have had no time to react. Of course it was a black bear, although it was one big black bear, so we were not in any real danger, which was part of my reason for being so calm at first. But man, I've seen bears before but never really appreciated their speed and agility until that moment. Big dumb raccoons, but still very strong big dumb raccoons. I was probably 4 years old in the dead of winter at my super rural childhood home. My dog, a large German Shepherd, wandered off and I trusted him enough to follow him. My mom didn't see me leave the yard. I think she was cooking or something. Either way, following the dog wasn't the best idea. Once we got well out of sight he stopped being in leader mode and went into protect mode. He just stuck with me and wouldn't take me out of the woods. I was too young to know to follow my footprints back or anything, and it was dangerously cold. I don't know how much time had passed, but my mom ended up calling emergency services. Cops and firefighters came out looking for me, and my dog almost mauled a cop that got too close to me. It wasn't scary at the time, but looking back, I could have easily died in those woods. Hey, this happened to me. I was about 1.5, went out into the woods behind our house in the middle of winter, and was followed and protected by our 1-year-old pup. I was missing for about an hour and my family was panicking, looking for me, when they found me curled up with the dog, sleeping. Sweet boy lived to be 14 before he crossed the rainbow bridge and was the goodest.